Good evening. Today we're going to be getting into the topic of signs she wants you to lead. Thank you for joining me. This is the Dominance Academy. I was going to have a topic tonight based around how to discipline your woman part 2, and I'm going to save that for another evening, probably tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we'll be getting into that, and but tonight we're going to be talking about signs she wants you to lead. Now, there's a little bit of a disclaimer here, with regard to uh, with signs that she wants you to lead, because you don't necessarily want to be looking for this, right? Because if you're looking for it, it's kind of like choosing signals, right? So you don't want to be treating it like choosing signals in the sense of, oh, she likes me. But I think one must understand, like as a man, that girls don't often speak directly to their needs all the time. Actually, much of the time, they don't speak directly of their needs. So it's important to understand that there's going to be cues. There's going to be subtle cues, and you shouldn't spend too much time thinking about them. But know that they are there. Um, and the reason why girls don't often advocate or verbally put out there like what their needs and desires are is that it breaks the mysticism. It breaks the story that's in their mind. Uh, it breaks the little fairy tale, because in the fairy tale, she doesn't tell the prince what to do and then he does it. She doesn't do anything overt. The things that she the things that she does are very covert, and this is largely how girls operate. They operate very covertly, and also there's other layers, like they're socially conditioned not to really be vocal about their desires and needs, and there's that to consider as well. But for the most part, I think it has to do with the narrative. Has to do with the narrative of telling people what they really want, and then that just kind of makes it I don't know, not so sexy, not so interesting, that sort of thing. Good to see you, Scorpion. So, yeah, this is probably not going to be probably even kind of thin with our visitors today, because when I was setting it up, when I was scheduling it, I didn't click the little thing to say share to YouTube before setting the schedule. So, but here we are. We're going to plug on. So like I was saying, note that girls, they will just give signs that they want you to take the lead. And why do girls want this? Why do they want someone to take the lead? Well, because as I've mentioned in other streams, their their minds run at very high speeds. They've got a very high RPM going on between their ears, and it pretty much operates from the moment they're awake to the moment they go to sleep, day after day. And this is, I would say, largely taxing on most girls, that they're stressed out by this. Um, and so part of them really uh, seeks to have a break from this. They desire a break from all of that mental activity, because what that creates is fatigue. And the natural I guess the natural next step for fatigue is desiring rest. So they desire rest, not just physically, although I mean we could all just enjoy rest, but it's the mental fatigue. It's taking a rest from the mind. It's taking a rest from the emotional transitioning of caring about that person, caring about those people, constantly minding this, constantly minding that. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be some Prince Charming, okay? We're talking more so about a woman who has earned the amount of attention that this requires. Okay, so I'm not saying that you should be looking to lead just like any girl. right? You should be ready to lead just because that's the state of you as a man. You should be capable and ready, but don't go out of your way to like lead just random girls. Okay. Sure, in like small instances, but only not to lead her because you know that's what girls want, or what they need. Really, it early at the early stages, it's just to test for compliance. Like your leadership at that point is just testing to see if you can continue to lead her, if she's open to being led by you specifically. And so, that comes through just following simple commands, right? You go somewhere and you put your hand out and see if she takes your hand, or you say, "Take my hand," or you say, "Take off your jacket, sit here." Um, you know, if you're going for drinks, like ordering her something, and not deferring to wondering what she likes, like none of that stuff. And so that's not necessarily like leading, but that has to do with more so testing to see if she's open to your leadership, open to you guiding her. And that's what's really important at the onset. Okay. This is more so having to do with um, the further steps, right? When there's like a bit of relationship going on, but you're not exactly in a relationship. Because if you are, then that means that you've already set a lot of things up. Okay, so this is like stages like just prior to that, and so these are some of the observations, some little tips that you should be looking for when leading a woman to see if like she's giving signs that she would like you to. And part of this actually working out well for you is just trusting your gut, like learning to trust your instinct. And unfortunately, a lot of guys, because of the transport of consciousness to the online spaces, what this does is it causes a fractionation of the mind, and it makes guys self doubt, right, or increases self doubt. So if you already have self doubt, it makes it stronger. If you didn't have much there, it's going to bring that in because there's a you have almost no choice but to start like comparing and questioning and measuring and all this stuff, which causes doubt, right? So part of this has to do with cutting yourself off or monitoring your exposure to the influences of social media, and not at all, but just the certain types, right? So you probably shouldn't be watching like other men, ogling over their lifestyle, what they say, what they do, that sort of thing. Instead, learn to cultivate your own, so that you have more of a reverence for your own, right, your own perspectives. And this is where you're basically creating more self agency and basically becoming your own locus of control. And that's really the beginnings of sovereignty. And when you can start trusting your own judgment, trusting your instincts, and your instinct, as most guys have it within them, is this desire to lead. And if your ego can get out of the way, then this can be done very well, and it's not very hard at all. But some of these things you should be looking out for. So we'll get into that shortly. I've heard it before, but I've yet to meet a woman who will actually let a man lead. They want what they want, and if you don't make the decisions she wants, she just takes the lead. That can be true, right? And we've gone into that stuff as well because it's always a two-way street of leadership. Okay, there's leadership on one side, and then the other side of the street is the desire to be led. So you could be the best leader in the world, have great influence, but if they have no desire to be led, or no desire to be led from you specifically, then this is going to be a problem. This is not it's not going to work out well. So sometimes really it's a crapshoot. All right, but that doesn't mean you should just stop. You should stop trying. You should stop being yourself and stop operating from your core. Stop operating from your nature. Continue to operate from your nature and just show up authentically, honestly, in how you believe you should be. All right, and without placating to what you think she wants and without placating to her desires and demands. So if she's really hard nosed and saying, "This is what I want," right at that point, you can just be like, "Hey, listen, I don't think this is going to work out. Right? I wish you all the best." And then you just float the fuck off. It's really because this should be something coming from deep within as like part of your system of being. All right. And you should not be compromising that, like just to keep a girl around. Okay. Because even if she gets what she wants, she's not going to be able to respect you. All right. Like it's just not going to work out. So she might be pleased in the moment by doing what she wants you to do or what she wants to do. Um, but really it's not going to result in respect. It's not going to result in reverence. Definitely not. Um, so just kind of leave it. It's not that big of a deal, right? Like girls are not that big of a deal. Um, always have the ability to walk away, and not out of spite, not with a chip on your shoulder, just a very matter of fact, right? Like if you go somewhere and you go to a restaurant and you're really looking forward to, let's say this one bagel shop has like your favorite blueberry bagels, right? And you go in that day and they say like, "Hey, sorry, I don't, we don't have any blueberry bagels today, right? The materials, we ran out of the materials to make them." You're not gonna get all pissy. You're not gonna get, your panties in a bunch. You're just gonna just accept the objective reality of the situation and leave or order something different, right? Come back the next day or say, "Hey, like when do you think you're gonna get them back in?" And I say, "Oh, a couple days." And all right, cool. Come back in a couple days. Like that's the same level of neutrality that you should be at when interacting with women. It should be completely neutral, right? No up, no down, no chip on your shoulder, and no going all the way forward. We know what that is. Like that's simping and shit. But having a chip on your shoulder, like these bitches ain't shit, like that sort of stuff, like that's just as bad as simping. It's just the other side. You know what I'm saying? And you don't want to be in the middle as a balance between the two. What you want to be is neutral, which kind of diffuses or dissipates both of those sides of things, right? It's an entirely other lane. It's a whole lane on its own with no sides. The entirety is the lane. So it's just neutrality. And this is the best, most easiest, most effective, most balanced way to deal with women. Because then you're not really dealing with them. They just are. And like here you are, here they are. And I don't know, it's just not a thing. Really, it's just your emotions, your attachments, your beliefs, your perceptions, all that stuff. That's what colors things, which then modifies the behaviors, right? So a nice guy or a simp, he's going to have certain beliefs, emotional attachments, tethers, beliefs and perceptions, all that stuff. And that creates like a colored lens that goes over his direct experience with whatever, well, in this case, a woman. Okay. Then the guy who's got that attitude problem is like, fuck these women, women are just hoes, uh, you know, they're worthless, like all this stuff that like, angry red pillars talk about. All right. That too is a colored lens over the objectiveness, right? And both of them, they will really believe that what they are perceiving is the objective truth. Well, objectivity is nothing. It's a 0 point, right? It's not feeling this way or that. It's not opinionated this way or that. It just is, right? So start just viewing women as like wildlife. Do you care much about deer or, you know, a hippopotamus? Same sort of shit. You're just like, hey, there it is. you know, Not that big of a deal. So let's look at the signs, because most men, um, it's kind of funny because a lot of them say want to be leaders, but most men want to be told. They wait to be told what to do. So it's out of one side of their mouth, they're like, I'm a leader. And then on the other side of the mouth, they are waiting for her. They're waiting for her to like let you know. And so they wait for instructions, they wait for permission, they wait for reassurance that they're wanted. And then they wonder why the woman beside them feels tense, feels critical, or feels distant. And because what she wants, she will almost never say out loud. And it's not because she's manipulative and not because she's playing games, but because attraction is not negotiated verbally. It's something that's felt. And leadership is not requested. It's something that's recognized. A woman rarely looks at a man and says, "Please take the lead. Please set the direction. Please create structure for me." She doesn't say that. Instead, she shows you. She shows you in subtle behavioral tells, like kind of like a gambler who can't hide his tells. And so it's like in moments of testing, in small hesitations, in the way her body relaxes when you step forward and tightens when you don't. If you don't know how to read the signals, you'll misinterpret everything. You'll think she's difficult. You'll think she's being moody. You'll think she's disrespectful. But most of the time, she's not resisting you. She's waiting for you. She's waiting to see if you're solid. She's waiting to see if you're safe to follow. Waiting to see if you can carry weight without collapsing. Waiting to see if you're consistent. Because leadership in a relationship isn't dominance in the loud or aggressive sense. It's something more like gravity. It's emotional steadiness. It's the quiet sense that if something goes wrong, he's going to take care of it and he's not going to be affected. When that feeling is present, that's when the woman softens. When it's absent, this is when she firms up. And when a woman is absent of this gravitational field for too long, that's when her layers of armor start accumulating. And that's when she becomes difficult for practically every guy. Practically. So today, we're going to talk about the signs she wants you to lead. But she's not going to say so, right? And these signs are rarely flattering. They often show up as friction, actually. But if you understand them, everything changes. You stop reacting, you start guiding, and the entire dynamic shifts. So the first thing you need to understand is this. Most women don't consciously think, "I want a man to lead." It's something that they feel biologically and something they feel emotionally. It's pre-verbal. It's in the nervous system. And largely, it's about safety. And not like physical safety, because we live in a relatively safe society. It has to do with psychological and emotional safety. And when someone feels safe, typically they relax. And when they relax, they open. When they open, trust grows. And when trust grows, they're more apt to follow leadership and direction. So, submission in the healthy sense is not obedience. Okay, obedience is just simply following instructions. Submission has to do with relaxing. It's a complete relaxing of the being. It's the ability to let go, like letting go of control. And it's not control of like deciding what to do and control of agency and things like that, but talking about what I was mentioning earlier, that high speed RPM mental chatter that's going on, that creates tension, okay? Tension is a form of control. It's a form of holding, okay? So that constantly, like you ever hear a girl when she's stressed out, you say like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, what's going on with you?" And she says, "I'm just trying to hold it together," right? That's the opposite of relaxation, which is the ability to let go. So a woman's not really going to be going into the realm or the lake of submission and be really willing to take direction and guidance until she has let go. She's let go of controlling all of those internal aspects that she's monitoring and managing. And no one lets go around someone who feels uncertain. So when a woman doesn't relax around you, it's not because she's stubborn. It's usually because she doesn't feel guided. She feels like she has to manage everything. And the moment she feels she has to manage you too, attraction drops real fast. Because now she's not with a leader. She's with another responsibility. And responsibility is not erotic. Responsibility is parental. And if she's the parent, guess who's the child? So let's talk about what it actually looks like in real life. Because the signs are subtle, But once you see them, it's hard to unsee them. So one real easy sign is constant questioning. It's not curiosity, it's questioning. So she'll say like, "Where are we going? What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you think? Are you sure?" Over and over. This is a consistent thing. So again, these aren't one-offs. These are things that you consistently see. Many men interpret this as disagreement or challenge, and it's usually not. It's a stress test. She's unconsciously asking, "Do you know what you're doing?" If every answer you give is soft, hesitant, or deferential, whatever you want, I don't mind, you choose. What she hears is uncertainty. She doesn't hear a grounded man, right? She sees and hears an uncertain boy who's waiting for instruction because he's probably like either too lazy or hasn't even considered leadership or is afraid of her approval or of not having her approval. And uncertainty absolutely just kills polarity. It's like snuffing out a candle because leadership requires direction, not control, but direction, being decisive. So sometimes that means something as simple as, "We're going here, be ready at 7. Calm, clear, done. No debate, no apology, no discussion. When you give clean, clear direction, many women, they'll visibly relax. And you'll see it in their posture. Their voice softens. They stop micromanaging. That's your first sign. It's not resistance, it's relief. So another sign, which is misinterpreted, is testing behavior. So this one, when a girl does this, it makes men defensive. She might tease you, she might challenge you, she might be slightly provocative, she might push a boundary and say something like, "You're too nice," or "You wouldn't handle it," or "We'll see," right? Like I've experienced that on dating apps, right? I'll say, I'll give a suggestion and give some direction, and she'll come back with, "Well, we'll see." Like that's not her putting you off. All right. This is not something for you to take personally. It's something for you to understand. So they might even argue. They might explain. Okay. They justify themselves. And every time they do, like this is not they, but like guys who do this, like they'll argue with her, they'll explain, they'll justify. And every time they'll fail the test. And because the test isn't about logic, okay? And this is an issue that a lot of guys like deal with this. They approach the female mind from the male mind. That's I know that sounds stupid because you're like, duh, I have a male mind. What other mind would I approach it with? And it's sort of like, that phrase like like walking in someone else's shoes. Right. So it's seeing something from someone else's perspective. And to truly understand women, you don't really need to do this whole like analytical thing that like so many guys are. Like there's guys who have like whiteboards, like massive whiteboards, just like analyzing and deciphering and dissecting everything that women do. And then they're like, okay, now if you do this enough, on so many different layers in this way, you will gain an understanding of women. That's really unnecessary, right? And it's just going to take an overthinker and make them more of an overthinker, which is not going to take you to manhood. All right. If you really want to understand them, try to think in their way. Okay. If you look at it in like a combat sense, this is like they say, to keep your enemies closer. Not that women are your enemy, but if you want to figure something out, you want to figure out like who's the other side of things, you look at it from their perspective. All right. And not from your judgmental view of looking at it from their perspective, but as if you were there. And this will give you better insight. All right. So my whole point there is to say, like, don't look at things logically and rationally. All right. And this is not a dig on women or anything like that, or to make you, guys sound superior or anything like that. It's just basically looking at things with the wrong mind. And that's something to just keep in mind. So the testing that she does, it's not it's not about logic and reason. And oftentimes it's not to disrespect you or hurt your feelings, but guys take it personally, right? They'll argue, they'll explain, they'll defend, they'll get into all sorts of just dumb shit, right? And her instinct, maybe not consciously, but her instinct is saying he's failing. Like it can feel him failing. Okay. And this is important. Like this is important for her, right? She's gonna that feeling she gets, it makes a mark, right? It's a little note, and she's like, right, but not consciously. Her instinct and her emotions are like, uh, my instinct is having second guesses. Okay, so really, the whole thing is about emotional stability, and what she's unconsciously checking is, does he wobble under pressure? A grounded man doesn't wobble. Like he doesn't even flinch. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't plead. He doesn't get angry. He stays centered. Sometimes he smiles. Sometimes he calmly corrects. Sometimes he simply holds eye contact and says, that's not how this works. Steady, unmoved. And that steadiness creates safety. And safety creates trust. So even in that phrase that I just mentioned, right? That's not how this works. Guys will be afraid to say that. So this kind of like goes back to what I was saying before about the about your own instinct, right? You're like operating from a place of sovereignty. This is the type of phrasing and the mindset behind the phrasing when you're operating from a place of sovereignty. You can easily say that's not how this works, because like what's behind that? It's this certainty for what does work or how it is supposed to work. Okay. And not out of bravado, not out of control, but just calm conviction, where you are just convinced of, no, it works a different way. So when something is presented to you, it and you can see and read the whole thing, because you know that like what she's doing is she's just testing for stability. And a lot of guys, they'll react to that superficial inputs, whatever she's saying or doing, and they react to that. And it's like you miss the point, right? You're reacting to the veneer part of things, not what's underneath the veneer. And underneath that is really just a desire for consistent based leadership. And so in saying something from a place of such calm conviction, that's not how this works. She can feel it in your tone. Like if she can feel like a non-combativeness and a sense of certainty in what you're saying, that sends way more of a message, right? It's the emotional fuel behind what you're saying that her instincts picks up on, and is like, whoa, oh, okay. I think this might be someone I need to pay attention to. And they should be looking for consistency of that energy. And this is where you are steady. This is an energy that's unmoved. And that steadiness creates the beginnings of safety. And safety creates trust. So another sign is overfunctioning. And this one's a little bit quieter. If she starts planning everything, or she just has the type of life where she is planning everything, making every decision, organizing the schedule, carrying the emotional load. Oh, excuse me. Handling logistics. That's not her being empowered, right? That's compensation. She's stepping in because someone has to. And the more she steps into that role, the less she feels like she can rest into you. So when a woman feels she must be the manager of the relationship, she stops feeling feminine in the way that allows softness to surrender. She becomes tense, or she remains tense, sharp, critical, analytical, and not because she wants to dominate or if she wants to even be in the position of leadership. It's because she's tired. She wants to be held by structure. And structure doesn't come from speeches. It doesn't come from your emotions. It comes from behavior and it comes from conviction, from you quietly taking ownership, planning, deciding, handling problems before they grow, before they show up. Leadership is boringly practical. It's not dramatic. It's not theatrical dominance. It's reliability over and over and over. And not as a performance so that you can convince her that you're worth following. Because that mask will fall off too, as she'll see the simp underneath, trying to do what you think that she wants just so you can win her affection and win her trust. That's the bullshit. Okay? The way that this is operating, this should be something that you do when no one's around. And she just happens to be there. That's really how this is. So, something guys don't really realize is that the moment a woman feels she can rely on you completely, she becomes more affectionate. She becomes more sensual, more cooperative. And not because you demanded, not because you've even said anything about those topics. It's because she doesn't have to stay guarded. Guarded energy is masculine, right? We talked about the armor. Relaxed energy is feminine. If you want softness, you must provide stability. And we're not talking financial stability or lifestyle stability. We're talking mental stability and emotional stability, right? Because what do you guys always say, right? Women are emotional creatures. Emotions are not governed by stuff, okay? Because there's plenty of people who can have lots of things, have a decent lifestyle, but still feel unease. They still feel tension. They still feel anxiety. They still feel fear. They still feel uncertainty. And if you don't have those things, you might be saying, well, I don't understand how that's possible. Well, it's possible because psychological and emotional states are not healed or formed or dissolved by having external things show up in life. And a lot of times people develop those things as a cope for the instability inside. Because the truth of the matter is that when you become sovereign, whether you're a man or a woman, it makes you want less and need less. Because before the sovereignty, before the groundedness, a lot of the things that you wanted were a cope to help you feel more safe. So once that's solved, once that riddle is solved, and you realize that it has nothing to do with the outside world, okay? It has to do with your inside world. So once that's solved, you're like, fuck, like I don't really need much. Like I don't need much of anything except like survival type things. It's an interesting shift. And then whatever comes around, it's just simply because it's a want. It's a desire. It's part of the reason why I have my guys spend some time sorting out their desires. Because a lot of guys are actually disconnected from their desires, except for the very basics in life. So you might get to a place where you're free and open to desire, but you don't have any desires. You've been disconnected from them. And not because like you're some monk or something like that, but because you are now, or you've never permitted yourself. You've had tons of conditioning for years saying that wanting things beyond the essentials is selfish. And it's not. It's actually connecting to your authentic self. It's connected to having agency. And I did some research, and psychology textbooks will say that there's about 15 to 20% of all males are fully I have full agency, self agency. And the rest are, wide, like a wide range of, partially having that self agency, but also um, just being influenced by the outside world and needing that, needing the woman or needing society, needing these external rules, right? Like in my world, like that's why so many people are drawn to religion because they need someone to tell them how to show up. They need that reassurance because without that, it's like they feel like they're free falling or they're just aimless. So it's important to really get in touch with that authentic self so that you can show up, right? And this also includes, the whole Jungian like shadows stuff that we talked about before. It's all linked. It's like all this shit is linked. All right, but getting back on topic here. Sorry about that. So I was saying that guarded energy is masculine and relaxed energy is feminine. And if you want softness from her, you need to provide stability. It's an exchange, always, but not like if I do this, then you will do this. It's more of an exchange where there's an inhale and an exhale. There's an ebb and a flow of the ocean waves. Okay. Um, there's a positive and negative charge on like two magnetic poles. It's the completion of a circle. So it's an exchange in that way, not in the bartering or commodity sense. Now, a critical distinction: leadership is not force. If you have to force, you're not it. You've lost. Force is typically used out of insecurity, disguised as strength. Real authority is calm. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten. It just simply exists. And when you speak slowly and clearly, when you make decisions without apology, when you enforce boundaries without anger, when you don't chase for approval, she feels something very specific. She feels ground. And humans naturally lean into ground because lots of humans have a sense of uncertainty when it comes to simply existing. It's sort of like this back burner existential threat that we'll just like walk around with, that most people walk around with. And again, that's why they gravitate towards systems that tell them what reality is and what's happened before and what's gonna happen after to give them ground. All right. So, but here's the thing. This is belief. This is like high-minded theoretical stuff. But when it comes to you as a man and you present that groundedness, when she feels ground, this is a real emotional thing for her. It's something that's almost cathartic, right? 'Cause she can feel it. I would be hard pressed to believe that um, most religious people feel their belief. I think they have belief, and then that allows them to feel more grounded. But I don't think they feel the grounding from that source. But they certainly can feel the grounding from the man that's in front of them. It becomes a very visceral emotional reaction. And that is what following actually is. It's leaning into something or someone solid. So when you notice these signs, questioning, testing, overfunctioning, tension, don't interpret them as disrespect. Interpret them as invitations, invitations to step up, to pierce whatever that is, to dismantle that test, to dissolve whatever state that she's in. And these are invitations to lead, invitations to embody the steadiness, because most women will never say, I want you to guide me. Excuse me a second. Sorry, as the dog was screwing around. So they're not gonna say, "I want you to guide me." But their body language, their energy, their emotional state, it'll be basically saying, "Please be strong enough so I can relax." Like, I want to be able to lean into you and let my legs give way. And the more steady that you are, like, the more dense your presence, the more her knees can give out to the point where she's kneeling, okay? And this is figurative as well as literal. So, if you learn to read that language, relationships really become quite simple. I wouldn't say easy, but simple. You stop trying to impress, you stop chasing validation, you become grounded, you become decisive, calm, and from that place, leadership stops being something you do. It becomes an extension of something that you are. And when you are that, she doesn't have to ask. She already knows. Does that make sense? All right. Just checking up on the chat here. We wait because we already know she's going to resist. Oh, so you're preemptively guessing, huh? Most women don't actually want to follow. After decades of feminism, for them to allow a man to lead feels like they are now powerless. Um, I would be just because of your mindset, because we don't communicate things that are outside of our mindset. But based on this, I would say that you probably don't have. Oh boy. Pardon me about that. So, like I was saying, you said most, and that's a lot. That's like what, over 50%, right? Let's see, like, so we're looking at like I don't know what age groups is, but women in the world are 4.05 to 4.09 billion women in the world. And you're saying most, as if, coming from the stance of having experience in this sort of thing, where you have experienced that most women don't actually want to follow. And I would be hard pressed to believe that you have that experience. This is not good. Like, I don't think that you have this. So this is coming from probably information that you've read and that you've come to a certain conclusion based on beliefs with probably far, far less experience. And and then you're saying here, we wait, right? So now you're like, what, speaking for men? How about saying I wait? Okay. So then you say we wait because we already know she's going to resist. So you are saying I'm not taking action because I already have a belief of what her behavior is going to be before I even test it out. That to me says that you're afraid. You're afraid of what might happen. You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of being tested. You're afraid of her poking you and you pop like a little bubble, failing whatever test it is to see if you're something stable. Because someone who's stable, someone who's grounded, they're not afraid of resistance. It's not even something to consider because it doesn't change whatever sort of sovereignty I'm moving through life with. It's a non-concern. It's not even on the radar of whether it happens or not. So it's like a lot of this is based around like erroneous beliefs, probably scooped up from other people on the internet, scooped up from books, and not through extensive personal experience. That's my guess. But I will say that the what is it? The one, two, third sentence here, okay, about decades of feminism. Any ideology that is like pervasive through a culture is going to affect that culture, right? No matter what it is. Like long ago, when was this? Um, so like the golden age of China, all right? This was during the Tang Dynasty, which is 618 to 907 CE. Okay. And this was when Buddhism had a deep integration into Chinese culture. And it was during that time period, and that's a long period of time, 618 to 907. It was recorded as their most peaceful time that in all of like Chinese history. Okay. Because a certain ideology had become sunken into the culture and became pervasive. It became widespread. And it changed a lot of things within the culture at that time. How people moved, things they did, the choices that they made, how they interacted with one another. And so, yeah, when there's a strong ideology that's backed by social media that has, various tendrils throughout society, it's going to alter people. Okay. But, and then you said for them to follow man, allow a man to lead feels like they're now powerless. And this again, I think, is not speaking from deep, extensive experience, right? I think this is projection. I think you, bloody hack, and this is no, or bloody heck, sorry, is no insult or anything like that, but I think you're the one who actually feels powerless. I think that's really what's going on here. And that's all right. Like it's fine to be in states like this, okay? But it's not fine to accept it, right? Because if we're in a state that we feel, right, we're having some like sort of like visceral emotional reaction to a certain thing, and then do nothing about it but complain and analyze and criticize, well, you're not doing anything. You're just basically using these vehicles to let off steam. You're creating valves, right? And you're just the valves of criticism, analysis, discussion, maybe even just like verbal rage or typing rage or whatever. That's just letting off steam, but it's not exactly solving the problem. And, but just something to consider, for anyone who's thinking like this, this is really not about bloody heck personally, because there's tons of guys who think this way. They think, oh my gosh, like, because of this, women are like this, and therefore they're unapproachable, or you can't talk to them, or you won't be able to lead them, or they won't be able to follow you, or making up all these things. And then I say, okay, well, in actual like breathing, heart beating real life, okay, not something that involves a screen, how many women last month did you actually speak to with intention, with a clear, concise intention? How many? And it's probably a number that you can count on one hand. And then they come up with conclusions like this. So what's really happening here? I think what's really happening here is natural stuff: fear, projection, self-defense, which is not physical. Obviously, it's emotional self-defense. And this is not leadership. These are many, many, many stages prior to leadership. There's a lot to figure out. I'm an overthinker, so it will make me overthink even more. Yeah, I remember the comments. Yep. Yeah, it's really important to not get in your head, okay? which is problematic. Like I said, like these whiteboard guys and things like that. They got their overhead projectors and laser pointers. This is you're not going to think your way to, I guess, having positive outcomes with women. It's not going to work. Like you can't analyze your way to success. You can analyze your way to success in business for sure. You can analyze your way somewhat to success in like fitness, or investing, or anything else basically in life that has like moving variables. Okay. But you cannot think and analyze your way through women. It's not something, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Um, Really, you should take that thinking and that analysis and turn it in on yourself. Use all that energy for deciphering girls to deciphering yourself. That would be much more worthwhile. Okay. But the problem there is you're going to face pain. But on the other side of pain is often truth. And that's where you want to get, because the path of manhood is not paved in bravado. It's not paved in showing off. It's not paved in beating your chest or making strong proclamations or looking cool. It's paved in bricks of honesty, one little brick at a time. And the honesty really has to start with yourself, where you say, I'm going to stop bullshitting myself. I'm going to pay attention to the narratives that I run like film reels in my head, and understand that they're completely manufactured by my emotions that I use as a cope, so that I don't actually have to meet myself, because I know just deep in the back of my mind that there are parts of me that I really don't like. And I think other people don't like them too. So I'm going to shrink, I'm going to hide, and I'm just going to kind of sort of somewhat go through life on autopilot. And maybe I'll get to the other side. And you will, but you'll live a life completely dissatisfied. And not because you didn't go on trips around the world or have great adventures with friends and family or fucked a bunch of women. It's because you went through life half a man. It's because you went through life partially engaged with yourself and thinking that these external experiences, that having, 6 women sucking your dick at the same time, doing drugs or partying, traveling, buying cool shit, that's somehow going to make up for that. And you can try. You can try your damnedest. But I guarantee you 1000% that you will fail. It will only bring temporary relief for a lifetime of suffering. Really, to become a man, and I explain this to a lot of my guys, and they don't, at first, they understand it conceptually, but they don't actually feel it until months later. And that is, you only become a man through reduction. It's a reductionist process, much like a sculptor, like a stone sculptor, right? They have the giant slab of marble, and they have the thing inside that needs to be carved out. So they don't spend time creating something. Well, they do, but it's a process of removal, of removing everything that's not needed. Then they get to the parts that are needed. Then that is fleshed out and made into something beautiful. So it's not addition. It's not saying, all right, I'm going to become a better man and get a better job. That'll make me more of a man. I'm going to beef up my wardrobe. That'll make me a man. I'm going to get a girl. I'm going to get 3 girls. I'm going to get 12 girls. That'll make me more of a man. I'm going to rent a yacht, or I'm going to buy a yacht, or I'm going to get a buttload of money. That'll make me a man. None of that stuff, although fun or useful, will not make you a man. And if you think it will, well, I've got a bridge to sell you. I don't know where that term came from, but you get the idea. Hey there, kitten. Good to see you. So so yeah, I kind of want to go back to what Bloody Heck was saying, because there is a grain of truth to this, and I've mentioned it in some of my other videos, and that's about the armor, okay, and I would say that blaming it on something like feminism is not exactly the right way, okay? But I understand the observation of what's being seen is this like protective layer and resistance and um, I guess guys would call it masculine energy sometimes. This is a coping mechanism, okay? What I've observed and what I know a lot of guys have observed is this bracing, is a bracing of the self. Okay. Now, why would somebody do that? Why would a girl do that or anybody do that? It has to do with not feeling safe. It has to do with, um, not being able to relax. It has to do with tension. Okay. When you feel tension, like I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you kind of feel like you're about to be attacked. Um, and maybe it's just something like guys do, or some guys, I don't know. But like you can kind of feel it when like someone's about to hit you or something like that, or jump you. You can just sense it. And when you feel that, like there's tension arises in the body because you ready yourself like your internal spring like coils and it like readies itself to react to whatever you need it to do. And that's what's happening. I can remember like whole memory just popped into my head. I was many years ago, I was in this nightclub and I go into this nightclub. I was visiting it by myself and I didn't know the place. And when I walked in, I automatically sensed a weird vibe. Like there was just like a confrontational vibe, not directly towards me, but just overall. There was overall like confrontational vibe. I didn't understand it. And so I'm walking, and this was during like the height of my kung fu training. So my reactions were like very quick. All right. So it was very sensitive. And in the sense, like my sensor array was able to pick up on subtle things. And I felt this person like poke my back. I didn't know what it was. And like without even thinking, my hand like whipped behind me. I grabbed it in the right kind of way, spun around, and they were in a wrist lock. The right, and I didn't even really even think or process what was happening. Okay. But because of my training, I was so at the ready for just anything. And the person was in shock because it was like crowded, you kind of have to do that like weird side shuffle. I hate clubs. And the person was just kind of poking me to like non-verbally say, "Hey, can you move along?" or "Hey, I need to get around you," or that sort of thing. They weren't being antagonistic, but I reacted and put them in a wrist lock without even thinking about it. And but that's kind of like the mentality of a lot of girls, and I had that because of training, because of conditioning. Okay, well, you put somebody in an environment for a long enough period of time with certain mentalities and certain behaviors and certain emotional stimuli, they're going to develop into a certain state of readiness, ready for whatever comes at them. And this is not a state of relaxation. It's not a state of welcoming something in. Okay. It's a state of repelling. It's a state of guarding. It's a state of watchfulness. And this is something that I think not is a result of feminism. I think it's a result of being in certain environments that condition the nervous system. Like being in environments long enough, it conditions the nervous system, whatever it is. Right? You take a total weakling and you put him into the Marines, and for a long enough period of time, you just start hammering away his consciousness and his nervous system. And he starts adapting and adapting and adapting. And after some years, now he's this machine killer who can take orders, can fucking run top speed to the top of a mountain without taking a second breath, snipe somebody off the top of that hill. Like without even thinking or feeling anything. And because of conditioning. And so what I think Bloody Heck was really getting at here if he was having experience in this, let's just pretend he's not taking information that he's heard from this and that red pill channel and this stupid book over here and all their his red pill buddies or whatever. Let's say he is having this experience of feeling resistance, um, feeling that girls in his presence are not willing to follow. Um, and if they were, maybe they were to say something or do something that would say that the girl feels powerless, and that didn't feel good. Okay, let's say that's true. This is something not to be blamed. Okay, it's something to be understood. And when we attach something like, oh, well, it's because feminism did it, all right, that's placing blame. Okay, what we need to do is come to an understanding, because when we understand something, that's how we can then take it apart if that's what we want to do. Like I've talked about this, like with machines, right? So I learned, like early on in my motorcycle career, like I learned that I need to know what they know, like as far as mechanics, because I went in, I went in to like get my oil and spark plugs changed, and they charged me like $200, and I'm like, how? How is that possible? With like an hourly rate of like $170, like that's like a New York rate. So I was like, fuck that. So I got myself manuals and stuff, and I started teaching myself the things that they know. And now, if I have a problem with my bike, whether it's in the engine or the suspension or whatever, I can take it apart. I know how to disassemble these things to find the problem, to then fix the problem. Okay, and this is the same sort of thing. So, but if instead of doing that, I just blamed, I was like, the bike was running improperly, and I said, "Fuck Honda. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. This piece of junk." you know, like it wouldn't make sense. Okay, I wouldn't get to the root of the problem if I wanted to fix it. Okay, um, so instead of placing blame, like looking for reasons. Okay, because a lot of times, especially in these situations, like with girls, you look for these reasons of like why something's fucked up so that you don't have to engage with it, to give you a plausible deniability, okay, to give you some sort of sense of like confirmation bias, and some sort of like a feedback, like a positive feedback that says, oh, I don't have to do this thing that I think is scary because they're fucked up, right? It's sort of like that. And then minus that whispering part, it all just kind of makes sense, right? Because there are things that you can point to. There are things like in statistics. There are guys who are having other experiences. You can say, see, there's a whole bunch of us that are having these problems. So, and I'm saying something similar as that guy over there, and we're all blaming certain similar things. So there's probably some sort of continuity here. But to me, all that says is there's a lot of guys who just don't understand, and they're looking for reasons. They're grasping for something that explains why their experience with women is so damn poor. And I would argue that they never even started in the right place, because they themselves have had experiences that cultivated and conditioned their own nervous system to behave in a certain way, to perceive certain things, to come to certain beliefs. Well, you think these guys out here are not walking around with hidden pain, with anxiety, with fear? Of course they are. If they weren't, I would be out of a job. But there's tons of guys. And do you think most people, not just guys, but men and women, sit around and become really familiar with those things such that they can unravel them like a ball of yarn, lay it all out, and then dismantle whatever doesn't work for them? Start peeling off the tethers that create belief structures about themselves, right? Identifying with some sort of trauma, identifying with this happened to me, which turns into a belief and a perspective about the self. So then you have guys like this who of course would say there's nothing wrong with me, or don't even put any thought in that direction at all because they're too busy thinking about girls, which is an indication that they're not sovereign. Because, well, when, like I said, when you're sovereign, your needs and desires go like this. There's really not much that you need, but there's so much, right? Because that underlying shit makes you want to go to another source and say, I think that will make me feel better about this internal rift that I have, this unsettling, this unease that I walk around with on a daily basis. But I'm only like feeling like the tip of that iceberg, but underneath there's like a whole load of shit. But I can kind of engage with this. And when I've had a girl in my life, when I had someone sucking my dick, when I had someone to talk to, right? Like have responses with my texts that showed some sort of enthusiasm for me, that made me feel really good about myself. And so I learned through conditioning that if I keep doing that thing, I feel good. So I want to keep doing that thing when that's not actually addressing all of the things underneath that little tip that's sticking out. You're wasting your time. But so many guys, they just stay on that. A lot of girls do too. But it's different, okay? Because actually, with the presence of the man that I was talking about, the presence of a grounded, sovereign man who doesn't need her for shit because he's supplied all of his own need with himself, like two mirrors facing one another, he can then guide her through the shit that she carries. And then this directly aligns with respect, it aligns with reverence, it aligns with safety, the things that girls are looking for. It allows them to soften, allows them to become something more malleable that goes, not something you can sit there and like grab and become like manipulate, right? Like clay, but something that becomes more liquid that flows into your container. Because when you're grounded and sovereign, your container is cast iron. It can hold anything from lukewarm water to molten steel, right? But no, that's not the case, is it? I mean, come on. Most guys are not doing this. Look at the numbers on views on like certain videos. That'll give you an indication about just solving like the mysteries of girls and shit like that. They're really looking for that. And so it's a misguided problem. Okay, it's an issue of a category error. And so they've got a particular problem, but haven't really identified it. Okay, there's not a full identification of it, partial identification, and then said, okay, I'm going to solve it with this. I'm going to try to solve it with this, and it's not going to work. It's a temporary. It's a temporary kind of satiating experience. All right, but I guarantee you that when you go through a bunch of girls, you'll realize I'm still here, as I was, as I always have been. Not thinking that you're going to disappear, but in the sense that the state and how I feel about myself has not changed. Okay, but just like any other addiction, if you keep the input flow of whatever that outside stimuli is, it'll keep you distracted, right? So if I can keep myself distracted with social media, I can keep myself distracted with porn, I can keep myself distracted with food or sugar or alcohol or bitches or blowjobs or whatever, okay? I can just keep this flow from various like channels, okay? And just keep it going and never actually have a chance, never even given my mind a chance to engage with myself. Because I don't know how, and because that's really uncomfortable. And so I might be like, oh, that's fucking gay. That sounds stupid. That sounds worthless. Okay. Come back to me in about 10 years and let's see where you're at. I promise you that you'll remain in the same like arrested development that you've had since that time a long time ago when that arrested development occurred. I guarantee it. You're just going to have more copes and more distractions. You want to do this right. And you really want to be able to engage with a woman where she's responding to you. Like, I mean, really responding to you, not performing in some sort of way, not in some sort of transactional thing, like, oh, if he does this, then I'll do that. But where she's like sort of dissolving into you, and not in a way that she's like erasing herself, but erasing that armor, which is a lot of times perceived as a self, both by the men and the women who are wearing it. Because after a while, you're just like, you wear a certain armor, regardless of who you are, your gender, that starts being believed as this is just who I am. This is just who I am. Like, you've heard many people say this, right? When some like say their behavior is criticized or whatever, they don't have the patience or the will to look into it. They'll just brush it off and say, oh, this is just who I am. And the thing is, we don't have things that are just. We don't have anything that is just so in human behavior. That's not how psychology works. That's not how human behavior works. Everything is connected to motivators. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, there's stuff always happening beneath the surface. There's always conditionings. And so there's no real truth to, oh, I'm just this way. It's just the way I am. That's bullshit. It's a cop-out. It's a deflection. You might say, well, girls, they deflect all the time. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. And most things that are squishy or fragile will deflect. So what kind of man are you? Are you squishy and fragile? Are you going to deflect? Or are you going to learn to take things on the chin? You're going to learn to take blows on the chin. Blows to your ego, blows to your pride, blows to your identity, blows to your concept of self. Can you take those blows and not really think much about it or feel much about it, but just allow it to happen? Because all that stuff is bullshit. It's all manufactured nonsense. What you think you are. Kind of like in the first Matrix. He's like tired from fighting. He's like, do you think that's air you're breathing right now? That self that you're defending, do you really think that's real right now? No, it's just a piecemeal together over decades. You've come to believe and associate a sense of self with that. But I'm telling you, when you start operating in this way, women respond differently. And it's not something that they know of. They're like, oh yeah, like I know about these kind of guys and they operate like this and they behave like this and it feels like this. It's not like that. It's something that is that kind of calls upon. It calls upon something, right? Sort of like if you have a certain smell. They say that the olfactory system is connected to the most vivid memories. I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but it's true. Like of all of our senses, the sense of smell is connected to memories the most vividly. So you'll smell something and it'll transport you to like, I don't know, the smell of a blanket that you had in the cabin that you stayed in during summer camp when you were like 12 years old. When you did like summer sleepaway camp, and it was the smell on the wool blankets or something. And you smelled that like when you're like 30 and you're like, holy shit. And it just, boom, it just transports you back right away. And so it's not like anything that's consciously happening, right? It's this internal response that's happening. That's the recognizing that I'm talking about. To recognize this is what I mean by the change in the female behavior. It's sort of like that smell accessing memories, but instead it's presence accessing instinct. And guys will try their damnedest to manufacture that instinct. They'll try to manufacture what they think will bring it about because they're like, "Oh, look at that. There's all those girls like hopping in that guy's car and, it looks like he's driving a fancy sports car. So, I guess girls like fancy sports cars." They do. A lot of people like fancy sports cars, okay? And you're like, "Wow, those girls are all like really kind of pretty." So, I guess pretty girls like fancy sports cars. So, if I get a fancy sports car, then reason to believe that they would like to be in my fancy sports car. And maybe you do that. Maybe you'll work and buy yourself a fancy sports car, and maybe there'll be pretty girls in there. And then you're like, "Yeah, I've got the pretty girls." But at some point, I promise you, in some sort of situation or situations, you're going to realize that they're not gravitationally drawn to you, that they're just following some sort of social agreement, right? Some sort of social transactional agreement. And if they stay cute and pretty and whatever, behave like this, then you'll do that. And, it's all very like surface level stuff. And you realize, like, dang, like these girls are not really like on me. Like they want to like breathe my air. They want to be in my car. That's totally different. Totally different than a girl that wants to breathe your air. And and this is not to blame guys. This is not to say that there's something wrong with you right now. Like this, it's an understanding. So it's not criticism. It's just an understanding of conditioning. Just realize that a ton of your behaviors are conditioned behaviors, even the ones that you think are your choices. And I'm not saying I'm completely free of all this stuff, but I have freed myself from a number of things. And this is really important for you to try to do. I mean, you might not solve the whole puzzle by the time you die, but that doesn't mean that you don't do anything. Like start flipping around that Rubik's Cube. Try to get some sides into solid color. If you get 3, okay, great. That's better than none. So one of the easy things, right? Because it's just like in our faces all the time, is this riddle of girls, right? Trying to figure them out. And the funny thing is, and this is why it kind of brings me back to this comment. Who said that here? Let's see here. Oh yeah, Eugene. Yep. Yeah, I was in there was this Game Global debate, and this guy Eric was on there. Eric and some new fellow that I don't recognize, but he seemed pretty interesting. I'd probably have a great conversation, well, with both of them, but the new guy is probably closer in alignment with my thinking now. But and what's funny is I noticed there's a trend. There's a trend towards the stuff that I'm talking about. And it goes in waves of being in vogue, right? Inner game and outer game and all this stuff. But I don't even. This is not inner game. Someone who like looks at technical aspects of game or like looks at game as strategy or something to learn, then they would look at how I approach things as inner game. Okay. But this is not inner game. This is recontextualizing being. Because when people look at inner and outer game, they're still looking at it as something that you do. And I'm not talking about something that you do. I'm talking reformatting who you are. And that's fundamentally different. It's not bringing a frame into your mind, right? Because that's what like a lot of inner game is like, oh, I'm going to reframe stuff. And reframing is a very powerful thing to do, right? It can help you in many situations. help you understand things and look at things from a different perspective. And this can change how you feel and how you approach things. And that it's a great skill, right, to learn about reframing. But a lot of guys, they take that too seriously, and they're like, they they treat them as like tactics. So it's like there's tactics for girls, and then I'll use tactics on myself. And really, then you're still just in a state of doing, right? We don't want to be in a do, whether it's internal or external, right? That's not really how things are solved, especially like with yourself. Things are solved with yourself by reformatting who is doing it. And then the things that you do externally, what guys will call external game, all of that changes because now the person has been changed. So it's like me, I'm always bringing up this scene and this quote right from Conan when they're talking about the riddle of steel and Thulsa Doom. He says, "Well, what is the sword compared to the hand that wields it?" And I'm saying it also matters the quality and the identity of whose hand it is. Because generally speaking, he's right. Thulsa Doom is correct. But he's assuming that the hand is of a certain quality. And this is much more important to understand. Then, once that's in alignment, you put a sword into it, everything's completely different. So that translated to out of metaphor and into, say, like interacting with women. Give me something to say. Whatever it is, to a girl, it will be completely different than someone who hasn't done what I do and doesn't teach what I teach and hasn't had the effects and the transformations my students have had. It'll come off totally different. So, for example, like take like a very needy guy, and let's say there's a great line to say, a great line to speak to a girl, whatever that is. Put it in the hands of a needy guy, and it's gonna come off totally different. And you could hear the words, and then maybe he doesn't stutter, maybe he doesn't say anything wrong, like maybe his dictation it's perfectly fine, okay? But there's something that will be felt by the girl. I promise you, something will be felt that will be different than what it is said by a grounded man. So there's often that saying that it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it. And I would go further and say it's more about who is saying it. And this isn't to, fall into the trap of like, well, yeah, like if you're a Chad, you can say anything you want, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. It's the state, like the state of being of the guy changes how words are felt. And it's not anything to do with his grammar or dictation or anything like that. It's something that's felt because this is what girls do. They feel they feel the man that's in front of them. And so yes, they are hearing the words and that can create a certain feeling or whatever. But this is this is not to be relied on. Yep. Yeah, if only guys would spend even half the time that they do on girls on themselves. Imagine the progress. It's crazy. Like think about like all the videos. You take like, you know, Joe Peterson, whatever, and say like average dude, average like late 20s dude. And the amount of time he spends watching YouTube videos about figuring out the female nature. And he took even half of that time and devoted it to himself. And I don't mean working on his hobbies or trying to, bring up his career or stack his money or anything like that. But I mean, pathways to understanding himself on a very deep level. Okay. A deep psychological level. Imagine the progress if he just took half the time spent worrying, like viewing videos on women. That's not even like all the time. I'm just saying just video watching. We're not counting for the mental activity. Like, I don't think about girls. I don't think about what they're doing, why they're doing any of this stuff. The only time I am is when first the girl has earned her position such that I am willing to focus on their state, what they're doing, and this that. They're not, if they're not there, then I'm not thinking about them. So they first have to earn that position for me to even put my thoughts in their direction. And then there's even further layers of that once they're there. Because it's not like, okay, you're here, now you get all this attention. It's not like that. There's specific layers and they each have like certain criterias. So that are having to do with her willingness, her openness, her consistency. All right. So all of this, like if I'm not like, so if she's just showing up, I'm not going to give her guidance right off the bat. Right. That requires a certain mind with a certain ability to listen, a certain ability to feel, and a certain ability to do consistently. So I have to measure for these things. So I'm only going to guide as much as they're willing to. So just getting into that position is not like automatic. Now you get everything. No. And those levels just keep going. They keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Leadership has layers to it, absolute layers to it. Like just doing what I tell you to do. Like that's, like go pick up my dry cleaning because I'm too busy. Right. Like that's like nothing. It's absolutely nothing. There's a big difference between that and listening to instructions on how to heal her own self-rejection, heal her own self-hate, right? And you think girls aren't walking around. He's like, well, that's fucked up. I'm not going to give a girl who doesn't have this. Good luck. Good fucking luck to find yourself a woman who doesn't walk around with a certain level of self-hate or self-loathing or self-rejection. Good luck with that. Because that behavior, just like all the shit that we're talking about, it affects things, right? You get certain beliefs, right? We talked about with, Bloody, whatever his name was. That we looked at his perspective, which is connected to beliefs and feelings. And they're also connected to how he views himself, right? Because you can't have a view of outside without also having a view of the inside. So what we see, what we perceive outside of us reflects something of ourselves. It tells us where we are. Like I had this, what is it? My brother's mother-in-law. She's this really crazy, devout Christian. I can't remember the type of Christianity. It's the one that like they don't approve of listening to dance music and dancing and things like that. Like that's all like devilish. Okay, and she's so like twisted up. Her spring is so twisted up tight. Basically, she walks out into the world and all she sees is sinners. And it's not a place of like compassion, right? Like, oh my gosh, I really want to help all these people. It's not like a bleeding heart. It's criticism. It's judgment, right? look at these disgusting sinners around me. Like that's her position. Okay. But her having that perspective, her having that perception, that shows us how what sort of like positioning she has internally, which is connected to how she feels about herself. Like one cannot have a lot of love for oneself and have disdain for other people. It doesn't work that way. You're like in the thing that I'd read, that's not how this works. You cannot be filled with love, but then view things hatefully. It doesn't make sense. If you're filled with acceptance internally, you're going to largely accept what's around you. If you hate what's inside, you're likely to hate what's outside. Makes sense, right? You can't have like I hate what's going on inside me, but I'm going to love everything around me. You might see that, but I don't think it's genuine. I think it's performative to make up for the fact. So yeah, she has that weird thing. And it's so when you have these perspectives of girls, when you have these perspectives of life, like understand you're leaking, right? Your pants are down and you don't even know it. All these guys out here criticizing, like bloody there, showing us his ass by criticizing feminism, blaming, right? Guaranteed there's a lot of self-rejection, self-judgment, lack of acceptance. Guaranteed. Like within him. But yeah, that was an interesting debate, And the other guy, he had this very good point, and I resonated with it. And he was saying, when you kind of like solve the riddle of self, you no longer need techniques. You no longer need to like rely on anything really. Because there's like the whole need thing shifts. Like everything shifts into a totally different lane, right? Like why would I need techniques if I feel neutral about women? Like what's to what's to do? You know what I mean? Like that scene that I love in that movie, Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and the guy, the cafe scene, with Scarlett Johansson, and he just walks up to the table. He leaves his friends at the table, and he walks over, introduces. Well, actually, I don't think he does introduce himself. I think the first thing he says is like American, or the first question he asked was like, "What color are your eyes?" And there was no there was no technique, right? To like try to like sway their emotions and get them doing this and that. He just came through. He was just himself. He wasn't trying anything. He wasn't doing anything. Like there's something weird about purposely doing something in order to get a response out of someone else that you can extract from. All right. Now I can understand that in places where you're trying to manipulate. Okay. I can understand that in business. I could understand that in trying to sell something. I can understand that if there's like some sort of like high pressure negotiation, right? Like say like those guys who talk to terrorists, right? To try to get them to release the prisoners, or the hostages rather. I can understand in those situations, right? Where you utilize specific techniques to garner certain responses from people to make them do something. That makes sense. But to get pussy, to get a girl to like you, to pay attention to you, to spend time with you, that's a little strange. And like that makes me wonder, right? Because I know at this point that a lot of our interactions with the opposite sex are largely influenced by our early interactions with the opposite sex, namely mom and dad. Okay. And and so because that's something that's true, it makes me wonder, like, okay, well, what's going on here? Like, why are you learning such like tactical maneuvers to elicit certain responses from girls? Like, what's really going on beneath the surface? And a lot of times I'm going to hear plausible deniability. I'm going to hear justifications. I'm going to hear excuses. I'm going to hear rationalizations, things that make sense. Because, after doing this for 10 years, people will come up with all sorts of things to deviate from the truth, to deviate from very simple facts about themselves. And then I got to spend months just slowly peeling away the onion, slowly peeling. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I was doing all that because I don't like myself, because I was taught not to like myself. I came to believe that I don't like myself. And I'm afraid that other people don't like me either. Like that's at the root of these things. That's at the root of tons of human to human interrelational problems. Is this like almost like this existential fear of not being lovable, being invisible. And that's like a major motivator. It's a huge motivator. But the real question is not having that problem, right? You don't want to stop there. It's really the question, how the heck did you get into that position in the first place? Where did you learn that? And why do you still believe it? Because I would say that if it's something that's external, you probably also believe it internally, right? If you sit there and say, "Oh well, women just don't like me," or I'm afraid that I'll never experience the love and respect from a woman, that sort of thing. Like guaranteed, just like how that internal external thing that I was talking about before, the reflections, you know, I would find it like hard to believe that they had the opposite inside. Like oh, they're filled with all kinds of self-love, self-actualization, self-respect. But then externally they would say, I'm afraid of girls not wanting me. I'm afraid of being unloved. I'm afraid of being invisible and lost. That just doesn't make sense to me. Like saying all that and having the opposite inside doesn't make sense. So like all this shit, all of this like criticism of girls, this rejection of girls, this tearing down of girls, it all stems from those very simple beliefs that you have. It's very simple fears that you've come to believe. And this girl, I was with her many years ago. She helped me during a, a tough time in my life. And we got to fucking when we shouldn't have, but I was not having good judgment. But she was a very wise person. She had a lot of wisdom. And she said, the first time I ever heard it, but I thought it was cool. But she said, fear is an acronym. I was like, really? So what's it mean? She says, it stands for false evidence appearing real. And I was like, oh shit. Like that's so true. And so guys go around and they have these tons of these false evidences. But because there's a feeling attached, the feeling makes it appear real. If you remove the emotion from the equation, then the appearance drops. This is why it's so important for guys to learn how to not shut down, but regulate their emotions. Right? If you've ever used like a pressure regulator with a dial, you can, make the needle go up and down, like a canister of, like argon gas or something like that for welding. You turn the dial, you can change the pressure, right? But you don't, a lot of guys, they don't learn how to do that. They don't learn how to regulate their emotions. It's almost like either they're feeling things fully with just no valve at all, just just emotions just all over the place, all right? Or there's no valve at all and there's just a block, like stuffing a cork in the end of a hose. And what comes out is just like some drips, some dribble. And then they convince themselves, both of these guys, that that's what real men do. Real men, they just stuff down their emotions. Real men, they show their feelings. No, what's the smart thing to do, the wise thing to do, the balanced thing to do, the healthy thing to do is to have regulated emotions. This is what is to have emotional maturity, is to be able to feel something fully, but not react from it, to not sweep you away so that your judgments becomes clouded, or to tamp them down so much that you cannot connect with anything. That's not the way to live. I think people who claim to be stoic are really just stuffing their emotions down instead of learning to regulate them. Because stoicism is not about that. Somehow it's come to that understanding that to be stoic is to become emotionless. And that's not it. That's not it at all. So, if you're interested in that sort of thing, I would urge you to do some actual research, history, and reading on what stoicism actually is. But we're not going to get into that. Not now. But if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I know it's hard to question these things, right? Because we're not talking about tactics, right? If I go up to a girl and get, well, guess what? If you sort yourself out, you're not going to have that kind of question. That's the thing. That's the thing. You sort yourself out, and girls are largely a breeze. They're only a problem because you are fucking that Rubik's Cube that's all mixed up. That's why girls are problematic, because who is engaging with them is all fucking twisted up. Of course it's going to be hard, right? It's like being, tied up into a pretzel and saying, okay, here's a pool cue. make that shot. It's going to be really hard. Yeah. If I dislocate both your arms and then tie them behind your back, go for it. See how successful you are. But yeah, undoing your misalignment should be priority number one. And if you find yourself defending the idea that you're not misaligned, that's a sign that you really need to. And because it's a practice, I cannot sit here and say, with all honesty, and say, I am completely not misaligned. Or, is that right? Yeah. I can't sit here and say, I am completely not misaligned. That's not true. That's part of the human experience. It's just that mine are different than yours. Okay. It's kind of like when I was teaching illustration, um, and my students were at a certain level, and they were perceiving the challenges in front of them and go, "Fuck! Like I've just got so much to do to become good at drawing and painting." And I said, "Well, get used to it because that feeling is never, ever going away. Never, because you'll get to a certain point, and then the fog clears. And you might get to that point and go, ah, yeah, I am really good. Look at this beautiful piece of artwork I made." And then the fog clears above your cliff. And you see a few meters above, there's yet another. You're like, damn, I'm I'm not done. So you go up to that one. It sucks. It's hard. And you get there and you're like, whew, am I good now? I'm afraid to look. Oh, the fog cleared again, and there's another cliff. Well, I guess I'm just to accept that this is going to be ongoing until I'm dead. And then the pressure from achieving that next level is just gone. You just do it. Right? There's no like, oh, complaining like, oh, this is tough or whatever. You accept it. You just accept that this is just what happens. And then it's easy. It's so easy. Well, emotionally speaking, anyways, because the resistance to what is gone. I mean, shit, that would solve a bunch of problems for just in that alone. Just accepting things as they are in this moment will allow for tons of anxiety and stress to go away. Try it. It'll be difficult at first, but keep it up as a practice and you'll get better and better and better at it. Just letting go. All right. That's also part of the process of becoming a man. Remember, I was saying it's a reductionist process, removing the stone that you don't need to get to the figure that's inside. That is all part of letting go. But letting go occurs on multiple levels. What's up, Efren? Can you describe the essence behind the infinite solutions source a man has from his point of inevitability? 6. Um, I don't even understand your question. I'd have to think about that. The infinite solution source a man has from his point of inevitability. Um, well, to me, what that makes me think of is just your essential self. That's the infinite solution. But I would say, um, is that a question worth having? Yeah, yeah, I am a night owl, and here's conditioning. So when I was working as only as a professional illustrator, because I still do it, um, but when that was my only job, I was also like raising a family, right? So I had little kids and stuff because they were, they were born, but my wife at the time, she was working and doing her thing, and I was running a business from home. So I was, kids all day working when I could and that sort of thing. But then when everyone went to sleep, that's when I really started grinding my business. And so I would stay up. I would stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just grinding, grinding, grinding. Whether it's painting or networking or whatever, and so do that for a number of years. So I've been illustrating professionally for over 25 years. So this is yeah, baked in. But now I don't have to because I control my schedule more, and I still find myself staying up late because I'm just my body is just used to it. and I'm still getting up at 5:30, 6 in the morning. 'Cause that's just what I'm used to as well. So, except for today, because it's fucking cold and shit. We got 3 feet of frozen snow here in New York City. So, just something to that, like, calls to my inner bear that wants to sleep. Like, "Oh, it's cold outside." Just pull the covers over my head, but that's not every day. Yeah, most days it's staying up till at least 1 or 2 in the morning and getting up at 6. That's typically the pattern. Yeah. So, all right. But I love the sound of this question. It sounds really cool. But thank you. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to pull this one to a close. Um, I appreciate everyone being here. It turned out to be a really good show, so I appreciate your listening. And again, if you have any questions, you can go to my website. I'm am I done with it? I don't know. I might be done with it, but I've revamped the website. It's the branding is all has a totally different texture now. So go and check that out, thedominanceacademy.com. I'll be rolling out with a new tutorial this week. I just have to edit the audio, so that should be coming out, and making a new one after that pretty soon. Uh, so I mean that in a way of his inevitability is what makes him come up with solutions clearly. Yeah, yeah. I think that comes about when I think that comes out about with sovereignty. I think that comes about with self-actualization. I think that comes about with developing high self-agency. Right. And so for those of you who don't understand, having like someone who doesn't have self-agency, they're always looking to things outside them to tell them how to show up, what to do, what to say, how to think, how to feel. So someone who's very low self-agency, they they're told everything. They're told what to do in every sense. And I think the ancients, they really understood this. I think they understood this very well. And this is, I think, um, one of the reasons why religion is around, because the majority of men do not have high self agency. I think most guys want to be just told what to do and they do it. And there's a percentage of guys who are like partially, like they have a decent amount of self agency where they make a lot of their own decisions based on just what they believe to be right and true. But then they're also kind of like, depending on the situation and circumstance or the context, they're looking for cues. And then there's a small percentage, about 15, 20%, who are high level of self agency, and they do not rely on looking for cues from anywhere. They look for the cues within themselves. And that self agency is like I look to myself for guidance of myself, like two mirrors facing each other, and then the reflections go on for infinity. I remember loving to do that shit when I was a kid. My mom would take me to like J.C. Penney's, and she's like trying on clothes, and there was these two mirrors, and to like check out the outfit. So you come out, and then the mirrors there, and I love just kind of like looking down and be like, whoa, like it just goes for infinity. I just loved looking at that shit when I was a kid. Um, but that's what it's like. So I think that what you're seeing here largely relates to that, because you have solutions come easily and you are able to think clearly based around your sovereignty, right? Because when you're taking in inputs from outside, now you're adding to the equation, you're adding more variables. Okay. And then if you are allowing that to happen, the only way for that pathway to even exist is if there's doubt, right? Because if you have certainty, you're not going to create a channel that says, okay, well, what do you think? What should I do? Right? Now, this is not an advocating for Dunning-Kruger. Okay. So let's not be Dunning-Krugers out here. All right. If you don't know what that is, Dunning-Kruger effect is when someone believes they have a higher, like a higher understanding or skill or something like that than they actually do. We've all experienced these guys, like the guy on the court who thinks he's the best fucking ball player, but he fucking sucks. And like when he does make mistakes, he's like blaming his shoes, he blames the ref, he blames the other players, he blames the weather, he blames the wind, and it's never just like, well, actually, I just fucking suck. The Dunning-Kruger is always the effect always makes the person think that they're grander, more grand, more popular, more powerful than they actually are. So that's not what I'm advocating for. That's not what I'm saying here when I say that it's the self-actualizing the self. Because in order for that to be created in a very meaningful way, it has to be built by those bricks of honesty. It has to be formulated by looking at the shadow and saying, "Come here, brother. You are part of me." Not something that I'm trying to sever and pretend that I'm such a good person and I'm not full of snakes, right? Trying to cut off your own limb and then throw it out the window, right? It doesn't come from that. It comes from eating the fucking snakes, right? This is when you're creating your becoming. And this is, I think, what helps out with, I think, what you're getting at. Yeah. Let's just grab this one last question here. As a man, do you let women ask you to be in a relationship with you instead of you asking her? Um, I don't think I've had that conversation in a while. It might be because of my age. Like I'm not gonna be like, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" And the women I encounter with, they're like, "Yeah, you're like a mature man." I'm not gonna be like, "Can I be your girlfriend?" Like that's very high school. So I think it depends on like also like your age and maturity and that sort of stuff. Um, but I think I understand what you're getting at, which is like a decision. Like, uh, do you let the woman ask to be in the relationship, or are you then asking her, right? And it never really comes up, right? Um, it's just either they're following me or they're not, and there's no real question on. Um, oh, guns! I got something to say about that. I got to change that shit. Um, so it never really comes up. Like, hey, do you want to be my woman? Or like, sure, saying like, oh, can you be my man? It's never a conversation that comes up. And I'm just seeing like, are they following? Am I following my system? Am I following my own program, operating from my constitution? And am I like these aren't even like, well, I wouldn't say ever, but like occasionally I reflect to just make sure that if I'm doing things right according to what I actually believe. Um, but it's not like this daily occurrence. But I just am assuming that I'm doing things right according to my own principles. And if she's here in alignment with that, then she's here and she's in alignment with that. If she's not in alignment with that, then she's not going to be here. So either she'll excuse herself and be like, ooh, how he's operating, how he thinks, how he believes, how he speaks, how he does things is just not conducive with me. And she'll just excuse herself. Or I will excuse her. So it's very short lived. It's not like something like you'll see it, because inner reflects the outer. The clearer you become, the clearer everything else becomes. So the less mystery you are to yourself, the less mysterious things are around you. And so it's like it becomes very clear when a girl's like, because she's there. If she's there, that means she's following. If she's not following, she's not going to be there. She's not going to be there very long. Either she's going to excuse herself or I'm going to excuse her. So the question never really comes up. So it's better to really sort yourself out, follow your own program, figure out your constitution, live by it, right? Your CPRs, your codes, principles, and rules, live by them. And then the woman who likes that, she will just be there. If she doesn't like that, she's not going to be there. And then guess what? You never have problems with women because they never stick around long enough to become a problem. Makes sense, right? Like if I'm running a restaurant, I'm not going to keep a chef who's problematic for very long. Maybe I'll give him a chance. Maybe he had an off day or whatever, but give him the benefit of the doubt just a little bit. But if I see consistency that he doesn't belong here, I'm gonna like, hey, bro, like I really don't think this is the restaurant for you. Or maybe food is not your calling. Maybe you need to do something else. But I'll let you decide that. What I do know is that you don't belong here. And I think you know that too. Okay. So it's that sort of thing. But Guns, before I leave, I appreciate you putting that link up because there was this guy who was basically obsessed with me, and he put out um, he put out a lot of flags, and I think I remember it, right? Like a bunch of my posts, just like boom, 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 were getting flagged for being inappropriate. And if you've ever flagged anything, if you see the process, there's like these choices of like why you're flagging them. And it goes into like some pretty heavy shit, like child stuff or trafficking stuff, I think, or trying to sell like sexual services. There's like all kinds of like fairly heavy things. And when you get flagged for a post or whatever, they don't tell you which one, right? What you were flagged for. It just says this was flagged, right? And you don't even get an opportunity to change it to make it less problematic or whatever. It's automatic. And it's automatic based on the claimer, right? Not not you, not the defendant, right? So whoever makes the claim, they get first dibs on the algorithm. And then if it's anything of those heavy items, immediately your shit is suspended. And then humans will go through and kind of see what's up. And I guess depending on what their criteria is, which they never really are specific about, because I see girls on, let's say, Instagram wearing like bras and panties that are perfectly see-through, right? They probably like fuzz out a little bit of what's there, just maybe by 10%. And then they're like, hey, go to the link in my bio that's not OnlyFans, right? And 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 they're up and running just fine, you know. I just had like a bunch of like erotic paintings, right, that hinted at dominance and submission. Some of them were a little bit more, but I get that. If you had like a girl in a metal collar with a chain dangling from it, like I get it. Okay, fine. But so a bunch of my stuff was flagged, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And my numbers started like climbing really fast, and I was thinking, well, maybe that's why. And but it turns out that there was this guy who will not be named, who has I guess a bit of an obsession with me, and flagged a fuck ton of my stuff. And at the time, I thought it was because I was getting more noticed by the algorithm because I was getting just like tons of new followers like every day. I was like, holy shit. So I thought maybe that was it, but it wasn't. It was because of this one individual, and he reported a bunch of my posts, and they looked at it. I hit the appeal button, and then that didn't work. And they're like, nope, sorry, we are deactivating your account. So this is the fifth time that my shit has been deactivated. So at this point, fuck Meta. They're a bunch of prudes. And, frankly, that platform is not suitable for what I do. Okay. They want things that are like corporately friendly, right? They want like influencer friendly, like that sort of stuff. and that's fine, because they've got certain investors, they've got other advertisers that don't want to associate with certain things, so they want to keep things very clean. I get it. Okay, so I basically I'm just moved over to X. You can do whatever the fuck you want on X, and well, within reason, but for the most part, you can do whatever the fuck you want on X and Substack. So Substack, I'm building that, and that's good because that place is very lenient as well. If you have something that's suggestive or even sexual, they just automatically like kind of hide it and they say, hey, show post. You just hit that button and you can see whatever I've posted. But so I'm just going to keep doing the thing that I'm doing with using AI to help create these like digital oil paintings showing power dynamics between a man and a woman, or just something of the man or just the woman, and using that as a means to express some of the philosophies that I have around dominance and submission, and also just fun, cute stuff. And on that note, if you'd like, you can go to the Amazon link and pick up yourself a copy of the Codex of the Sovereign Order. This is a book, a compendium of various like verses expressing these philosophies, but in more of a poetic form. And it has a sort of like like an ancient order sort of feel to it. I'm almost done with the submissive version. So even if you're not a sub, I would suggest getting this, getting the one for submissives, which will be coming out. And because it'll give you insight, okay? Insight into the deeper levels and understandings of submission. And then there's also how to be a dominant lover. So you can pick this up as well. Pretty thick read on here. And just a disclaimer, this book is not going to make you a man. All right. It's strictly about being a good lover. So you need to understand that distinction. But yeah, both would be good, just on different levels. And keep your eye out for more books this year. I'll announce them as they come around. And yeah, I think that's that. As far as like what is my X account, I'll share that. I'm still kind of like building its branding and stuff. There's really nothing there. But my Substack, I think, Uncle Gun's already posted that. So the Substack, you can go here, and we'll just treat this for now as like my social media account, the Substack. I just hope that at some point they bring in like music integration, but maybe they won't because it's really designed for writers. Okay. But it would still be nice to be able to attach music if I wanted. But anyways, okay. Pulling this to a close, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciated your presence, allowing me an audience, allowing me your ear for 2 hours. So very much appreciated. And thanks to those of you who are watching this on the replay. Go to the website, check it out. The rebranding, the retexturizing of the website. I really enjoy the way it looks now. Much more streamlined and simple. All right. Till next time.